For 42 years, your average Republican senator played the game perfectly. And then, almost overnight, the game changed completely. This video is about the political earthquake that just shook Texas to its core. How John Cornyn, one of the most untouchable Republicans in modern history, got absolutely demolished by Ken Paxton in a Republican primary runoff. And what that means for every establishment Republican still clinging to the old playbook. You're going to see why MAGA didn't just change the party, it replaced it. And if you stick with me to the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Washington Republicans should be genuinely frightened right now for their seats. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to RPW Media, where we are MAGA first, conservative second, and Republican third, with the goal of bringing you the most honest news coverage of the day. All right, let's talk about something that the corporate media is trying to spin into a simple Trump endorsement story, because it's not. It's something much bigger and, frankly, much more interesting. John Cornyn spent 42 years doing exactly what old school Republicans once considered the perfect political formula. Stay disciplined, avoid major scandals, raise huge sums of money, keep good relationships in Washington, and climb the ladder carefully and never look shaken. For a long time, that strategy worked beautifully in Texas politics. He was the gold standard of the buttoned-up Republican senator, polished, professional, predictable. The kind of guy who gets invited to all the right cocktail parties in Georgetown and never, ever makes a scene. And then MAGA arrived. And here's the part that should make you stop and think for a second. John Cornyn hadn't lost an election in 42 years, not once, until now, until MAGA showed up. That's not just a political upset, guys. It's a 5-alarm fire for every Republican rhino in Washington, still operating under the assumption that what worked in 2004 still works today, because it doesn't. Tuesday night was not simply the end of Cornyn's Senate career. It was a loud warning shot to every Republican in Washington still pretending GOP voters think like they did back in the Bush years. Those days are over. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton didn't just beat Cornyn, he crushed him. This was not a close race. There was no mystery about the outcome. After more than 4 decades without an election loss, Cornyn suddenly looked like a politician from a Republican Party that no longer exists in its old form. And honestly, the signs were there for a long time. People just didn't see them. They didn't want to see them. Here's what's really interesting about this, and stay with me, because this next part is where it gets genuinely important. Corporate media outlets will reduce the entire story to Donald Trump's endorsement because that is how modern political journalism operates now. They don't want to make it into what it really is. If Trump coughs, cable news panels act like the Republic is hanging by a thread. Yes, Trump's endorsement helped Paxton. Nobody seriously denies that. But if you stop the analysis there, if you just go, oh, Trump endorsed somebody, that's why they won, you're missing the actual story completely. Cornyn's problem started years before Trump entered the race because Republican voters themselves had changed. They're no longer searching for polished Senate operators. They do not care about cocktail party approval inside Washington. Being tied closely to Mitch McConnell or climbing the Senate leadership ladder no longer impresses the MAGA base. Because let's face it, guys, the MAGA base is the Republican base now. For many voters, that actually hurts you. Think about that. The very resume items that were supposed to make Cornyn more electable are now making Republican voters suspicious of him. That is a seismic shift in American politics, and it didn't happen because of one man only. Let's be precise about what Cornyn represented, because it matters. It truly matters. He was professional, careful, predictable, business-friendly, and willing to strike bipartisan deals when necessary. He was the kind of establishment rhino that would smile and say that he would never stoop to the levels of the progressive Democrats while sitting back watching them run roughshod all over our country. Years ago, Republicans viewed those traits as signs of competence and electability. Today, MAGA hears those same qualities and immediately starts asking, whose side is this guy really on? Think about it. We do. Because here's the uncomfortable truth that the GOP establishment has never fully digested. Republican voters spent years watching conservative politicians campaign like warriors back home, then arrive in Washington and transform into cautious managers, obsessed with Senate traditions, media approval, and bipartisan lunch meetings. They'd talk tough in the campaign ads and then go make deals with Chuck Schumer before the inauguration confetti hit the floor. Republican voters want fighters now. They want candidates who appear ready to fight the media, federal bureaucracies, activist judges, radical university culture, and the permanent ruling class in Washington. If that's not you, get the hell out of the way. People can argue whether that is good or bad for the country, but arguing about it does not change reality. The shift already happened. Politicians who fail to recognize it keep getting steamrolled. Now, Cornyn did try to adjust. Give him credit for that. He saw which way the wind was blowing. I mean, you could see the effort. He aligned himself more closely with Trump and reminded voters about his conservative credentials. But here's the problem with that kind of late-stage makeover. MAGA voters usually know the difference between genuine political evolution and survival mode repositioning. There's a word for a politician who suddenly discovers he's a fighter 2 months before a primary. It's called desperate. The voters smell it immediately, and they can smell it from a mile away. It's like a restaurant that only starts putting extra cheese on the pizza when the Yelp reviews go negative. I mean, you notice. You're not fooled. Paxton understood the Republican mood far better than Cornyn did. He presented himself as an anti-establishment disruptor, and that's because that's what his whole career has said about him. Cornyn campaigned like somebody trying to earn a promotion inside a company that already went bankrupt, which is actually a perfect metaphor for what the establishment GOP has been doing for a decade. Here's the part that establishment Republicans will refuse to understand, and this is the most important thing I'm going to say in this entire video, so pay attention, please. This race was not merely a rejection of John Cornyn personally. MAGA voters rejected an entire style of Republican politics. The donor-driven, consultant-controlled, heavily scripted GOP establishment is losing power because Republican voters increasingly believe the entire political system is broken. The whole thing, not just Democrats and not just the media, the whole apparatus. And honestly, can you blame them? Think about what Republican voters watched over the last 20 years. Immigration policy kept drifting left. Universities went further left. Corporate culture went way left. The media went further left. Federal bureaucracies went further left. And while all of this was happening, many Republican leaders were lecturing their own voters about decorum, about being civil, about not embarrassing the party. Are you kidding me? That anger existed long before Trump rode down the escalator. Trump did not invent that frustration. He inherited it. Eventually, politicians like Cornyn got buried underneath it. MAGA completely changed those expectations. Now, Republican voters ask one question above all others. Will this person actually fight? Not, does this person have a good bipartisan relationship with others? Not, does this person have a long record in Senate service? Not even, does this person have a clean personal life? No. The single most important qualification is whether that person will show up and actually throw punches on behalf of the people who voted for them against the very people who are trying to destroy our country with woke progressive politics. These are the people who are sick and tired of watching Democrats fight for the most ridiculous and harmful policies with frightened rhinos in the background just shaking their heads and nothing more. If voters sense hesitation or weakness, they move on quickly. Cornyn found that out the hard way. And what happened in Texas is not isolated either. Similar political patterns are appearing across the country. Republican primary voters now reward confrontation more than caution. They reward energy more than resume lines. They reward conflict more than consensus building. Again, people could debate whether these trends help or hurt the country long term. That's a fair discussion. But pretending the trend does not exist, acting like this is just one weird race in Texas, is political malpractice, and you will pay the price for it. Just ask John Cornyn. He'll tell you. What happens after this matters far beyond Texas. Republican office holders across Washington are studying this race carefully because it delivered a direct warning to the Senate GOP establishment. The old Republican playbook is falling apart. Raising money, avoiding controversy, and maintaining insider relationships are no longer enough to survive indefinitely. Republican voters increasingly see approval from Washington insiders as proof something is very wrong, rather than proof something is going well. That represents a massive cultural shift inside the Republican Party. And it's not going back, guys. Look, all you rhinos out there, you've got to get this through your thick skulls. MAGA is now the Republican Party. Get used to it or get out of the way. John Cornyn spent decades mastering the old Republican system. Then Republican voters changed the system itself. And almost overnight, one of the most durable Republican politicians in modern Texas history suddenly looked politically obsolete. So here's where we land. Cornyn's defeat is really a story about a party that its own voters quietly rebuilt from the ground up. Not through party conventions or think tank white papers, but through millions of people who finally decided they were done being managed. The bright side, that kind of accountability, voters actually firing politicians who stopped working for them, is exactly what a republic is supposed to do. Say what you want about MAGA, but the grassroots finally found its voice, and Washington is learning, one primary at a time, that you either fight for the people who sent you there or someone else will. All right, guys, join us tomorrow in our live stream at 6 p.m. Eastern. Every Friday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, we do a live stream where we go over political stories of the week that we think matter. The chat is pretty lively, and I think you'll have a good time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.